now listening to the Hold Your Point podcast, a platform dedicated to discussing millennial culture and experience through a Christian lens, redefining who we are with cultural excellence and as children of the Most High, cultivating thought-provoking discussion and spreading the word of God with love. Hold your point.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Peace to the planet. This is the Hold Your Point podcast. We are the Hold Your Point podcast crew. My name is Fortunato. I got DTH in front of me. Lee Strauss, Michael Joseph, DJ. What's happening, fellas?
What's the deal?
What
You
it do?
already know.
What's up,
We
y'all?
here. We
Yes,
here.
sir. Tapped in, man. Ready to clock in.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
As always, man, we got a good special topic that we want to jump straight into this morning, this afternoon, this evening.
So special.
And we want to talk a little bit about World War III, the impending World War III. There's a lot that's going on right now in the news. We got surveillance balloons just popping their way into our atmosphere. We got
Missing submarines.
we got ships off of the coast of the United States,
Man,
on different angles surrounding us, and so my first question I wanted to ask y'all too, because I seen Biden make a big statement recently, and he said, make no mistakes about it, we are in World War III. So what do y'all think that means for us, like for the near future?
I think that I play Call of Duty. I'm ready to get drafted.
Oh Lord.
But I think what he means by that, it's not war as in what we think is war, as far as our military service going out and defending the land. We're in World War III by the differences through monetary, through the finance. You know what I'm saying? There's power that's trying to be seeked because there's land that's trying to be conquered. And with that saying, it's like, where does respect versus sovereignty come in? Because at the end of the day, we are at war, but not the war that people think we're in war. It's you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, to allude to that point, I think to that statement, what Biden's kind of alluding to, or what a lot of officials are now alluding to as the start of a war or whatever, is that you see a lot of countries gearing up themselves. They're preparing themselves like it's a war. They're gathering information on things. They're building up arsenals on things. They're hurting other countries in different ways, like Mike was saying, whether it's financially, biologically, through land, agriculture, through sea, or whatever. You just see different countries doing things nowadays that would adversely affect the U.S., even whether it's now or in the future. And then, you can see like, hey, maybe we need to start preparing ourselves too.
Mm-hmm.
Did Biden really say we're in World War III?
Yep, I saw it.
Was it on the State of the Union?
It was somewhere official. I don't know if it was State of the Union though. I can't say for sure.
Well,
If I find the clip, I'll share it and send it to y'all.
yeah, that's cool. I mean, man, war is always going on, I think. Not always so explicitly, not always so violently, but kind of like what Lee and Michael Joseph were saying. There's always conflict between nations. And as I said on another episode, I think a large part of it is about resources. There's not a source of unlimited resources that or unlimited materials that people can use for whatever. And because of that, it's a struggle to get resources, because unfortunately, man, left to our own devices, we're greedy, we're selfish, So even when you have enough, you still want more. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's probably at the crux of what's going on. But certainly power, I mean, there's a saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think there's definitely a power struggle going on. But can somebody kind of highlight some of the stuff that's going on? Just because even for me, myself, I've seen the news, but I'm not 100% in tune with every little detail, because we'll talk about this balloon that was sent from China, or it seems to be sent from China, that was it a Navy base or a military base, I believe, somewhere over the U.S., kind of getting intel. And there's just a lot going on. There's the Russian ship, submarines on the water. It's a lot.
Yep.
I think, I don't know which one of y'all said it, but I know it was one of y'all said that it's just in a disguise or Distraction because of other things that are going on. Because like I said, one of y'all said it's back in 2001 we had a Chinese aircraft fly over the U.S. unauthorized Chinese aircraft. So this is not the first time. It's the fact that it's being put more attention on because of what's going on and who the political party is and currently in the office.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what we're seeing now and where we are is because finance. It's always finance. Like, it always comes back to finances.
It's always about money.
And I seen an interpretation where it said that it's a slight deviation, but one of the beasts in Revelation possibly being like finance instead of like a superpower. So just another point.
So I'll say this in terms of, I know we started a podcast, we're talking about another world war, right? And when you think of world war, it's another art, right? And when you think of war, there's specific things why countries will go into war. Religion is heavy, politics, and also land, territory, right? And a lot of times we look at the things that are going on right now, but in the grand scheme of it all, there's things that happened a few years ago, right? But it isn't until recently when everyone's gathering, because you got to understand, when you're going into war, you got to know when to strike. You can't just on a whim, just the next day, next week, you just try to strike. That's not the way a smart person would go into war.
It's not the art of war.
That's not the art of it for a smart person. So I mean, we can go into it more, but I just wanted to kind of give the backstory maybe a little later on why I think all this is going on.
Yeah, and just to go back and answer DTH's question, I think a lot of it also has to do with like the formulation of BRICS. As we know, those countries coming in together and make that alliance.
What's that stand for?
It's different
Brazil,
countries. I know
Russia.
China's a part of it. Was it Switzerland?
Brazil, Russia,
India,
China, and Switzerland.
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, yeah. Sorry, I said Switzerland. But yeah, I mean, so that has to do with it, and then also the oil, right? So like the U.S. oil was supposed to be traded in American dollars. That was the setup that we had with, I think it was Saudi Arabia. So we would trade protection for Saudi Arabia, and then they would trade all the oil in U.S. dollars. There's a term for it. I'm sure the money guys here might know what that oil term was. But so that was what the understanding was. But now it's shifted, and so they don't want to trade their oil anymore in U.S. dollars, and now it's becoming a problem. And everything else is kind of stemming from the fact that it's putting America's equity in danger or their asset in danger, because now they're going to trade it in foreign currency.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. Back in the early, I think it was 1940s, NATO was formed, right? And when you think of NATO, that's America. It's like 30 different countries that's within this organization, NATO. So you have Britain, France, Canada, a bunch of different countries. And what I find interesting about this NATO, obviously USA is the one that's leading the way with NATO. But they formed it after World War II. And the reason why they formed it is for protection, basically. Like, if you were to go into war, you have this backing from these other countries.
They don't want no bullies.
Basically. But what I find interesting is that NATO is starting to move towards the east, right? So a bunch of other countries are starting to form in within NATO. And just like how we touched on earlier, a lot of wars are started because of territory. So now NATO is getting pretty much right up on Russia. And what's also interesting is in 1950, I think, Russia asked to be a part of NATO, but there was decline. There was decline entry. So now, and also Putin put this memo out, was just like, why are you forming all these countries into NATO? He actually said this back in 2007, I believe. So now he's thinking like, okay, I guess they're forming this towards my country, Russia, and perhaps maybe China. So like that's why I say like a lot of times it be things that happened years ago that's actually starting to formulate and happen now.
Certainly.
Yeah, and to add on with Putin Putin knows the art of war. They said that he's been studying history books of war and the art of war for years, and what he's trying to do with Ukraine, is try to claim their land because, like we said, resources. So with the resources that they have, for NATO to come in and try to take that, we see it different, that it will be where if their resources are taken, it's a threat upon us.
Mm-hmm. And then even to that point too, as y'all mentioned NATO, just recently too, I don't know if y'all seen, but Finland and Switzerland got voted against being able to join NATO. And I think Turkey was the one that voted against them. And, the conspiracy theorists are saying, well, there was HARP that was used to create the earthquake and stuff that we've seen in Turkey and Syria because they voted against those countries being able to come into NATO, which is a stretch. Just to give you, just to strengthen DJ's point where it's not usually something that happens today. It's something that's been boiling up for a while, and now it's like we all got to deal with it.
Yeah, no, but and even to that point, I think that these things, I don't know if it's about y'all, but to me, it just seems like these things happen more and more nowadays, or you just maybe hear about them more and more. I mean, and there is a biblical scripture that talks about, in the future days, there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, and that these things must come to pass for Christ to come. And so, there's definitely, I feel like, more of these things nowadays. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like nowadays you hear about more times of a country going against somebody, just something that seems a little minute, or it seems, like a small issue, but they're going against them. They're fighting against them for territory, for land, for protection, for money, whatever. All these things are happening more and more and more, and they're fighting over them more and more and more, I feel like.
Yep. Now, I wanted to ask y'all a real question, too. Like, what is the possibility of surveillance balloons coming from a country that we are not aligned with just floating into our atmosphere and not being detected? Especially post 9/11.
That's very weird.
It's so weird because our military is the one of the top militaries
number one
in the world.
We shut it down with a missile.
And I don't know. To me, it got a lot of attention before they actually took action. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that come into our U.S. that these F-22 bombers taking out that we don't know behind the scenes. So why is this balloon something of importance?
And also,
was it 3 bus sizes?
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
And also, I'll say this, and y'all know how I be with politicians. They never really tell you the truth, right? But from what I heard, this actually happened during Trump's presidency when he was president. So, like, you should definitely be looking out for these now. It happened before, like, and that happened. Now it happened again, and you didn't realize it happened. So that's a good point. Like, it is something deeper that's going on, but we're not probably privy to it. So
yeah, I think it's definitely strange because, as Michael Joseph said, we're the most powerful nation on the face of the planet. When you think about the strength of our military, strength can be measured in different ways, but nobody's seeing the U.S. when it comes to that. So it's very interesting that these things could transpire. But I'm thinking of something from a different angle too, because it's been the status quo that the U.S. is the bully in the world, right? But normally when you have a bully, you try to stay away from them. But it seems like people are feeling a bit more bold to do some things. And I'm wondering what is changing that some of these countries are feeling like, what? That bully is not as big as I thought he was.
And
I got an explanation. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, what usually happens is it's always one of the ones that get picked on who has a little bit of bravery that comes up, and then everybody else is willing to stand behind him now because he was the one who stood first, which is Putin.
You mean like Flick in A Bug's Life? Yes. Hey, that's a great movie.
Because, even before that, because I think Kim Jong-un, would have been that, but he didn't have support. Nobody was standing with him. Like, But Putin is a little bit more refined. He's been president for about 85 years. So
Yeah, I think that's true, but I also think he's seeing the timing. He's seeing what's going on in America nowadays, and he's saying, to answer your point, I think that bully that we talk about nowadays is not as tough as it used to be. That bully nowadays
realizing
is
when
not
to strike.
Yeah, that bully nowadays now has the its infrastructure of the family being destroyed by different policies that are happening that are making America or the West, you want to say, weaker. If you want to think about even the British countries and all that, a lot of these policies nowadays are making the West, America, weaker in these senses. And you see the man is not as strong as he was in the home nowadays. And what does that do? The family is breaking down. And what the family is breaking down, communities are breaking down. Communities are breaking down. Towns are breaking down. Towns are breaking down. States are breaking down. Ultimately, the country's going to break down. And that's how it goes down. It starts with the infrastructure of the family. And you see that getting weaker in today's America. So that bully is not so strong no more.
It's all about the money too. The money that's being pushed behind it. You know what I'm saying? So let me ask you guys: if China and Russia join together, you think the U.S. can handle?
Not by themselves.
Well,
If they were fully aligned with each other against the U.S.,
yeah,
Not by themselves.
I don't know.
Because everybody got nukes now.
Yeah, I mean,
everybody ready to
I
push
think
that button.
I don't know that it's likely they'd be 100% aligned because
right?
not everything that they do, they're united in their opposition to the U.S.
There it is.
Yeah.
To
That's
that
what I'm
extent,
saying, yeah.
But they have their own things they want to do too, their own way of life that they believe is right. So I don't know that I see that happening fully, but I just wanted to add on to what Lee said because I brought up that question because I think that's what the crux of the whole thing is that we in this country, I mentioned this quote a few episodes ago, how
Strong men create.
yes, but strong men create good times create weak men. I kind of shortened it now. It was a little longer. But anyway.
Check out the episode if you want the full thing.
Yeah. So I think we here in the West, we're in a time now where things are relatively really good for us. And like you said, you see people becoming weaker and most importantly men, right? Because men are the leaders of society. And if they're starting to break down, you're going to start to see other institutions within the country start to break down. And I think, as you were saying, these countries are looking at that and seeing that our leadership and everybody in the country are not as strong as they once were.
Yep.
And they're weaker. They're vulnerable.
Yep. And I think
All that stuff that happened with the Pentagon, that stuff can't help, shine a good light of America. Like, they jumping. Y'all seen what happened, so.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
And I think what gives it credence too is the fact that, like, I think we lost a lot of respect in an international space
Yes.
after Obama left office. When Donald Trump came in, I feel like these leaders who've been in the international space for a long time and know what's going on, it was looking like America, like, this is who y'all really chose to come to these meetings and represent y'all. And it was like, all right, well, we can't respect them no more because look who they choose as their leader.
Reality TV stars.
And then we follow that up with sleepy Joe Biden.
Grandpa. Yeah.
So I mean, we've been on a trajectory for a little while now with just poor leadership, and these other countries are not going to respond to that well.
I know we talked about excuse me. I know we talked about politics in another episode, but should we, as Americans, be concerned with our hard-earned dollar going into a war that we really, or the conflicts that
You don't have a
nothing to
choice.
do?
Yeah, what you gonna do?
Well, You don't have a choice. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, you have a choice to the extent that you can vote for your leaders, but I would be upset because it's tough though, because as a Christian, I don't believe in violence and war, you know what I'm saying? But I understand it's an inevitability. I still wouldn't want to say that I want to be a part of it or support something like that. But at the same time, these things are going to come to pass. So, you say that on one hand, you don't like violence and all that, but at the other hand, you want to be protected. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want somebody invading your country and taking people
captive and things like that. So, like the military serves a purpose. And I always am so thankful for those people who
shout out to the military,
ROTC in high school and everything. They excited to go serve the country. Like hats off to them, man, because Lord knows I don't want to do that. But we need people to defend the country in that way.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll say this as far as with like our leadership is concerned. Like, I feel like we're the only country that tells you what we're about to do. Like, these other countries, they move in silence. They're not telling you like what we're going to do. Like, because as an example, look at the Nord Stream, right? President Biden, Grandpa Biden, he literally came out and said, if Russia goes into Ukraine, we are going to blow it up. And then they asked him, like, how are you going to do it? And he's like, we're going to make it happen. And then another lady, I don't know what her name was, she also said the same exact thing. Now, as we know, Russia went into Ukraine. What blown up? the Nord Stream. And that, you know what's crazy? They're backing off. They said, no, we didn't do it. Huh? So that's why I say we're the only country that tells you what we're going to do. And what's crazy is that this stream actually, I'll break it down, this stream actually supplies oil to Europe.
Oh, now I know what you're talking about.
So you're
underwater in the ocean.
In the ocean. So now you're messing with the money.
Yep.
Right?
Resources.
So you're messing with the resources. Now you're starting to see balloons. You're starting to see submarines off in the water. Why? And then there's a reaction.
And then they planted like those charges like a while before, and then they didn't. And so that's a really good point.
And now the resources that Russia was providing, I think, to Europe, I think it's actually coming from another country that may have helped USA plant these. But I digress.
Yeah, no, you bring up like the absolute point. James 4:1-2. What causes quarrels? What causes fights among you? If not this, that your passions are at war among you. Your desires and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain. You fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. That's all talking about resources and war, what we were just talking about. People fighting over things, people fighting over the pipeline in Russia now. They're fighting over everything. And nowadays you see it more and more.
So, go ahead,
Yeah, real quick. I know you want to go. I was just going to say what DJ said about the U.S. Telegraphing what they're going to do before they do it. When you think about back in World War II, and, I believe we're allies now with Japan, but prior, they sent us, friendship medals, I believe it was, to kind of signify the partnership. And then later on, Pearl Harbor happened.
Pearl Harbor, yeah.
And so we realized that was all just a ruse, to deceive. So
send them friendship bracelets.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, but no, I wanted to ask y'all too. So like with the news out with, the warships off the coast of the U.S., whether I think it was on the East Coast, the coast of Florida, the coast of Hawaii, and then I think Alaska, something like that. We could fact check them for sure. But it's a couple different places they were off the coast of in international waters, right? And they're all armed with nuclear weaponry that can definitely hit the mainland from even probably where they're at. What percentage, because yesterday when I brought this up in church, like I can kind of just tell, like I was looking at people and they kind of seemed uneasy, like they hadn't heard this news before, and they looked a little uneasy. So like it made me think, like, what percentage of, like, do y'all think true believers would be ready for a nuclear attack if they just hit the button?
Well, how ready can you be for a nuclear attack?
I mean, ready to go home, I guess.
They said the only thing that's going to survive is cockroaches and Twinkies. So.
And Cowboy fans.
Oh, Lord. I hope not. I mean, from a spiritual perspective.
And Joe side. Sorry,
from a spiritual perspective, we're supposed to always be ready. And that's to, spread the gospel, to have an answer for the confession of our faith, and also ready to die. That's a reality that we face whether there's a nuclear war on the horizon or not, because we really don't know what's going to happen when we step out the door. But I really hope so, because there's so many things to take us away spiritually right now that, if everyone who claims they're a Christian were to be gone in an instant, I don't know that everyone would be ready, because it's people are being pulled away right now, I think a lot.
Yeah.
So,
My only thing I have to say to that physically, my only encouragement I have to say is physically. I don't know the answer, but I think spiritually, to answer your question, people should definitely store the word in their heart, store the word in their mind, because there may come a time where if a hard time like that comes, there might not be no church, there might not be no Bible,
Book of Eli.
might not be no iPhone for you to look up no Bible with, and so you have to store the word in your heart.
That's very true, because look at a lot of histories where innocent lives were lost because of collateral of war.
Mm-hmm, true.
And were they ready?
But you know what though? As much as the threat of these things happening is there, I don't think that a global nuclear holocaust is going to happen. Because if we have the
Takes one button.
well, I'm saying,
The thing is,
Like,
they would have to start it. Go ahead.
well, I'm saying we've dropped the only people to ever use them on someone else is the U.S. on Japan, right? Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, but I don't see it happening on a global scale because the world, everyone will be dead, right? And we know from Scripture, Christ is not coming back to a world where there's nobody here. You know what I'm saying?
Two-thirds will be gone, though.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think on a global, everybody scale, like the whole world is going to end type of thing is going to happen. Could it happen again? Because like I just mentioned, the U.S. used it on Japan. It happened somewhere. Could it happen here? Potentially. But I don't see everybody starting to launch these things because then the whole world will be gone. But we know that's not going to happen.
And
It's not going to happen, but you got to understand, there's a lot of, the Chinese right now, they're doing a lot of war exercises, and their naval is doing a lot of war exercises close to the Taiwan waters. So with that saying, they're getting closer and closer, which is scaring a lot of Americans. And we're looking at it in the sense of we're both trigger happy. All it takes is one misfire, and then it's one big war that's going to start.
I think there might be launch codes too somewhere in the mix, but I feel you.
Yeah, no, but there's wars, and there's not wars, but battles, I should say, battles that have started because of trigger happy situations.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess there's just a few different aspects of it. I kind of lost my train of thought. I'll circle back.
Yeah, well, it's like I was saying, I think it'll be hard for it to be a whole global thing because we have to, if we're Christians, we believe in the word and what the word says, and I don't see it getting to that point where we got the whole world is involved in this.
Now, well, I remember what I was gonna say. I think a lot of times too, even as Christians and just Americans alike, we get rocked to sleep with this false sense of security of, oh man, our military is mighty. We don't have anything to worry about. Like they can literally be in Tradition Square and that's fine. Well, we have, and you know what I'm saying. And it's like I understand because Biden then was talking about how we have the Abrams ship, and I don't know if y'all heard about those Abrams bombers or whatever in the ships, but essentially it fires off like a nuclear missile that can pretty much levitate a country from where it's trajected.
Those nuclear bombs is crazy. DTH just DJs just talk about the nuclear bomb that was sent in Japan and they call it, I think they call it like the little boy. But it pretty much leveled the country out. It's crazy. And now I think it might have been South Korea, one of the countries, they was parading their new nuclear weapon. They had it like on this big truck. And that joint.
But then, like, because even to your point, though, with 2/3 being wiped out, right? And we know that we're in the angels that's under the Euphrates will be loosened, and then 2/3 will be gone. But thinking about, like, how that would happen, like, the only answer it points to is nuclear warfare. Because unless there's, like, the Battle of Gettysburg that lasts for 100 years and we're just trading AK rounds for You know what I'm saying?
How are
Like,
people going to be wiped out so quickly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to Fortunato's point, like I think in the end times, and the Bible kind of talks about that. If you're reading Revelations a little bit, I think it's going to get bad. It's going to get real bad. And one of the things might be an increased activity in nuclear warfare. Maybe not the whole world like blowing up, of course, but there's probably going to be an increase in nuclear activity. You know, if you look at Matthew 10 verse 34, it says, "Do not think I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." That's Jesus talking. I feel like it's going to get real bad. It's going to get real violent. It's going to get real, aggressive in those end times.
but that's why I asked y'all too. Like, how ready do y'all think hard down Christians are? Because we seen how fickle people was when it came to COVID-19, and and I'm not picking or saying judgment on what choices people chose, but I'm just saying like leaders in our denomination got real shaky in the beginning of COVID-19. And some churches closed their doors and never reopened. Up to now, they still having service on Zoom.
That was chemical warfare too.
And so it's like if the leaders who is telling y'all like feeding the flock is shaky on the first sign of a pandemic, how are we gonna stand when nuclear times come?
Well, I mean, we don't want to jump on the pandemic talk, but me and you look at that differently because I personally think you should use wisdom. Like if somebody telling you like, yo, there's a shooter outside.
For 3 years?
Okay. If somebody tell you there's a shooter outside, it's okay. I walk with God. And you get shot.
I still walk with God. Either way, I get shot.
and you get shot.
Okay, but I still walk with
Well,
God.
You could have stayed inside and walked with God. But
See,
Yeah, but sometimes like
To that point though, because there's an example I've heard. I actually used this the other day, where it's like a guy is stranded in the ocean and he's asking for God to save him, and like I think 2 or 3 people on boats come by and he's like, "You need some help?" And he's like, "Don't worry, God's gonna save me." And he ends up drowning. And then in this theoretical thing, he goes to heaven and says, "God, why didn't you save me?" And he's like, "I sent you 2, 3 boats. Like, why you didn't see it?" So, we can say God is protecting us, but does God work through others or other means to sometimes provide for us that maybe we miss because we were looking for it in a different way?
Well, I mean, I don't know how that answers the question of what I said about leaders being shaky when it came to the pandemic versus the nuclear, like, stemming peace. I just think, like, what it comes down to is that as I've grown, like, individually with just, like, just learning, like, the word and retaining knowledge of the Bible, I'm realizing that, dang, a lot of these folks that I looked up to when I was older don't really know the Bible for real. Like, they know, like, entry-level stuff of the Bible, and it's like, it's not until you learn the Bible yourself that you realize that, dang, they really don't know what's going on. And so it's like, if that's the case now that we see, and, there's a lot of different other things that we can point to show, like, where the health of the church is right now. But do y'all think the church is in a healthy enough state to stand spiritually when those type of times come?
I think the true Christians are, right? Like those who are really about it are always ready. Because there's going to be a lot of people, as the scripture says, not everyone that says to me, "Lord, Lord," on that day will make it into my kingdom. Didn't we prophesy? Didn't we visit the sick? Didn't we do all these things? He said, "Depart from me, I never knew you." So there's a lot of people, a good number of people who will feel good about their standing and everything, but at the end of the day, they're not quite in line with Christ's principles. And so even though there's people out there saying, "I'm a Christian," you talk to them, they say, "You're a Christian." We can't read their hearts, but God can.
Yep.
And so unfortunately, some of those folks are not getting it quite right, and they'll ultimately be lost. But I think God is preserving those who he knows are set for the kingdom. So ultimately, those people will be ready.
And to kind of chime in there on that, there is going to be a select few of people that's going to be able to withstand that kind of persecution and withstand that kind of hard times that are going to go through. But it may be a lot fewer than maybe we think. And that's what it is. It's gonna be the Bible talks about the broad path of destruction. Many's gonna go that way. Many's gonna go that way. But few will find the straight and narrow path to light and to the kingdom. Many more people are gonna go to destruction. It's just how it's gonna be. And even in today's Christian walk, you'll see that. So.
Yeah, so I'll say this in regards to the question that Fortune asked. when you think about the church, it's only a select few of people in that church that's running it anyway. Like you could look at some of these big mega churches. It's only a handful of these people that's keeping it together. So on to the point of these two brothers, what they just said, it's a select few. It's a select few that's actually still doing what is needed to be done, still keeping the laws that God set aside and put for us to keep. So
Yeah,
people will be saved, but only a select few.
And it took 2 points because I was thinking about that yesterday too, even with the remnant that'll be saved, right? And I was thinking like, man, like in the county that I live in, like I was wondering like how many Sabbath keepers are in my county, because none of them come to my church. I'm pretty sure none of them go to your church. I don't know like what the ratio is for people living in Indian River County, but like. And then not to say that there isn't like a small number of independent people who might keep the Sabbath and just don't choose to go to a church. But like, what is that percentage for real? Because that in itself is a remnant when you just look at it from a county and then look at it for the state. And then to DJ's point, when you look within that number, okay, now we're looking just at Church of God Seventh-day Keepers. How many of them are making things happen? Because there's 3 types of people that come to church. The ones that see church happen, the ones that are wondering what's going on, and then the ones that make things happen.
But is it your relationship with God, or is it the church you go to?
What?
Well, I'm asking because of the fact that it doesn't. I don't think it really matters what your doctrine or it's your relationship with God at the end of the day.
Well, the point I was trying to make was just the remnant. The remnant and how that selection might be just so dwindled down because within the body of believers, there's only a certain aspect of those that's actually making things happen. Just like there's a theory, just in a corporate sense, where it's I think it's the price theory or half price theory. Well, anyway, the way that it works is that it says that the total number of people. So let's say you have 27 people, right? So the square root of 27 divided by the denominator is how many people who actually push the work forward. So if you have like 100 people, then go ahead.
You know, it sounds like the Pareto principle. I think
I might have said the name wrong. Yeah.
I think it's kind of like the same as the 80-20 rule. I don't know about the square root and everything. That might be a different one.
No,
It might have been 2 different ones. It might be 2 different ones.
It could be. The one I know is the
80-20.
Pareto principle, where it's 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people, and then 80, vice versa. So that's a good point. Now, I agree with what you said in principle about as far as a remnant and being maybe an even smaller number of those actually doing the work. I don't know if it's based strictly on Sabbath alone, but in principle, I'm sure there's plenty of people who claim to be Christians, but again, are not truly.
Yeah. I was just using that as an example. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But all right. Well, I don't know if y'all had any more questions or anything else we wanted to jump into in regards to this. I mean, I think there's a lot going on, and a lot of it, we're not even seeing on CNN no more, which is another thing. Like, if y'all I don't know if y'all realize, but the quality of the news that you get now on CNN versus what it used to be is like
nothing.
They don't talk about nothing really going on. And it's like at one point, like that was a go-to, like, but now it's just like all Trump stuff, all documents being taken out of the White House all day, every day.
Yeah, I get my news from social media.
That's true. Me too, actually. I get up to speed really quickly with Facebook news, but I think it's a lot of sensationalism and being first to talk about hot topics, and because it's a lot of it is ratings and just getting people to view, as opposed to maybe channels like, I think BBC is a little bit better, British Broadcasting Corporation, I believe that's what it's for. Their news, you get a feel it's more strictly giving you the information as opposed to CNN and Fox News these days. Yeah, just trying to get ratings.
Even ABC World News is a little better than CNN at this point. But so anyway, just to go ahead and start wrapping things up, man, this has been a little bit about what we're seeing right now in 2023, happening right now with some of these surveillance balloons and warships off of our coasts, and our president saying, make no mistake, that we're entering into World War III. Germany has also even said that we're at war now. And so, it's just a lot to kind of look for in the coming months. But ultimately, as we've said over and over and over and over again, that, none of our times are known to us. So these things might be developing, and we walk out of here today, and that could be the end for us. So while we have breath in our body, let's do what we can to make sure our relationships with the Creator is intact, because we never know what tomorrow's going to bring for us. So
Yes, sir.
this has been another episode of the Hold Your Point podcast. We are the Hold Your Point podcast crew. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you find us at. Please tell a friend to tell a friend. And until next time, man, we out of here.